Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name's Jenny Kim. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a career education coordinator in the Career Center. And today we have a lot of topics at hand. You'll get an idea of what those are based on that pre-eval there. And I was going to ask folks to introduce themselves, but because we were recording, I'm actually going to opt not to do that so that folks can stay anonymous if they'd like to. But if you would like to share in the chat, I mean, your names are already there, but name, major, and then if you have an idea of a career field or industry or what might be next for you, if you want to put that in there, that'll just help me as I'm giving examples and whatnot, making sure they're all relevant to you all. And you can do that privately or with everyone. So let's go ahead and jump in and get started. Okay. I like to start all my presentations with the principles of community because career can be a very personal conversation. Career journey can be very personal. I'm gonna just ask folks that we're upholding the principles of community, specifically the respect and the social justice pieces of that. Well, when we talk about the job search and career in general, I think about it as a game that is not set up for everyone's success, that not everyone starts with the same resources. And my goal is to teach you all some of the strategies and some of the rules of the game, noting that I don't agree with most of the rules of this game, as career is really grounded in whiteness. And I will also be talking today from US context. And so there may be other things, there may be things that I say that are cultural to the United States that necessarily aren't to other countries. Throughout the presentation, please feel free to put questions in the chat. More than happy to answer those. And don't feel like you're interrupting me if you type them. I'll take the pause and read them as needed. All righty. So if you all wouldn't mind in the chat, is just giving me an idea where you all are at in your career or grad school process. So some of you might be graduating this semester, some you're graduating next semester, and so you're looking for internships. So where you're currently at might not be on this list, but just to give me an idea of they're kind of in order, but kind of not, because you can be in all different stages at one time. But just an idea, if you all don't mind sharing in the chat, kind of where you're at in this process. Are you still working on a resume? Are you interviewing in those sorts of things? I'll give you all a minute to do that. And I'll also remind you all that there is like a part 2 of this with my colleague Madigan. And so that's going to be in March. And so we will be focusing on these sorts of topics this evening. We actually won't be going into interviewing, if I remember correctly. We'll find out where the slides take us. But if there's stuff that's not covered and you're like, oh, I was hoping this, know that that other presentation is also available to you all. Cool. Sweet. Feel free to keep putting those in, but we'll move forward. Some folks joining us. Deanna, do you have the ability to turn off the chime?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and look.
Thank you. Alrighty, so we're gonna start off with a topic of the topic of making connections. Some of you may know this as the word networking. I prefer to use the terminology making connections because when I think of networking, I think of a lot of suits and ties and cocktail tables, and that's just not my scene. So I like to think about making genuine connections. And so that's how I'll be discussing it this evening, give you some ideas of what it looks like to really be your authentic self in building these connections that could ultimately help you with what's next. That could be job, that could be grad school, whatever it might be. So I'm asking you all another question. If you haven't noticed already, it's going to be interactive. You also are more than welcome to unmute for this question. So either unmute or chat. Why is making connections important for the job search?
Oh, I know. Making connections for your job search is important because it helps increase your chances of getting hired, as people will be able to attest to your character.
Exactly. People like to hire people they know, right? Thank you. That was a perfect answer. So folks like to hire folks that they already know, or people who they trust, who are telling them, oh, this is the person you should hire. This is another part of me saying how the game is not set up for everyone's success, because people tend to network with folks who look like them, who are similar to them. And as we know, this can lead to bias in searches and bias in who gets hired, who makes connections, and those sorts of things. And it's not to say that it's not possible to make connections with folks who are different from you, but it is an inherent part of our system. And a lot of jobs are found through networking. And so I talk about the concept because I know it's out there and it exists, even though I don't like that it does. And so to go more into depth, I wanted to give you all some ideas of how you could build these sorts of connections in an authentic way for yourself. And so some ideas we have here are attending Career Center events. And I'm going to go more in depth into this in a bit about some of the programming that we have in the Career Center that is specifically set up for you all to make connections with employers. Asking folks to job shadow or informational interviewing. That's the job shadowing obviously is harder right now, but the informational interviewing can still be done over the phone, through Skype and those sorts, or through Zoom. And so I will go more into depth of what that looks like in a minute here. Another way is volunteering. I do understand that not all of us have the capacity to volunteer or to do unpaid work. And so sometimes even part-time work in the industry of interest can be helpful, or you can think of that as an internship as well. Get involved on campus. There's a lot of student organizations out there that are specific to industry, specific to majors, where they've been established for so long that they have connections to employers who they bring in to do presentations, to engage, and where there's previous members of that student org who have gone on to do the work that you're interested in, who want to come back and give back to the community. Getting involved in the community just as a whole or in general. I've heard of success of folks joining Facebook groups, of groups that just have like common hobbies. And so they get to hang out with folks in this common hobby, but then those 10 individuals all have 10 different careers. And then they are making a connection with someone, right? It has nothing to do with the hobby. It's just that they were all hanging out, doing the craft, or, playing with their snakes, or whatever the hobby might be. And another one is attend office hours. So your faculty can be a good form of folks to make connections with. If you have a faculty member who you just really enjoyed their class, who are potentially doing research in an area you're interested in, could be another point of connection. Sometimes the faculty have spent their whole career in academia, and so they may not have an extensive network outside of the university, but some are in industry. And so it's worth asking around and seeing where you might be getting some connections of folks that you already know. So ideally, and as you'll notice, all these different ideas here are all kind of different levels of risk, all different levels of comfort. Some of them more introvert, some more extrovert. We'll go more into depth of a few more introverted ways to do it, because I'm an introvert personally, and we will talk about both. Yeah, so like I said, getting involved, informational interviews, and connect events. Something else I'll note about the making connections is also helpful if you're planning on starting your own business. And so some of you might be in a place where you're like, okay, I have to do contract work, or I have to start an LLC in order to work. And these connections can be a great way for that as well. Like, I can give you a personal example. When I was in undergrad, I started a Taekwondo team, and then I came to CSU for a grad school, then was in Fort Collins. 3 years out from undergrad, I get a Facebook message from a friend I had done Taekwondo with 3 years prior who said, "Hey, Jenny, I have a program, a Taekwondo after school program established. I'm moving to Pennsylvania. Do you want to take it over?" And so I opened up my own LLC, and then I was able to get contract work that way. So I just want you all to note that this isn't just for the for someone, like this could also be for someone who's starting a business and that sort of thing as well. Okay, so some ideas of things you could start doing today. One is asking your peers about what they hope to be doing or sharing that with your peers in general. Though right now, a lot of you may not have a ton of social capital. At some point you may. And so it's just important for your peers to be aware of things that you're interested in and what you're hoping to do. Or it's possible, right, that a job comes across, someone emails them, was like, "Oh, I have this great opportunity for you." And they're like, "I already have something," or "I'm not interested in that, but I know that, my friend Madigan shared with me that she's interested in that sort of work." And so they could forward it your way. The idea here is there's a theory called planned happenstance. So it's this theory of planning for the possibility for something to occur. And so what that means is you're intentionally putting yourself in situations where connections can be made in an authentic way. The idea is not to go in like, I'm going to intentionally join this student org so that I make one connection so that I get a job later. Like, if that's how you want to do it, by all means do it. And making those authentic connections can, and making it feel a little more genuine could also make it feel less icky. Sometimes I feel like networking can feel a bit icky. And so the idea with this planned happenstance is you're always prepared to answer the question of like, what are you interested in doing next? And I know that can be a terrifying question, and not all of you have an answer to that, and that's okay as well. Sometimes what am I hoping to do next is just thinking through, well, do I want to be working on a team? Do I want to be working outside? Do I want to be working at a computer? Like when I'm saying this, I'm not saying you have to be like, I'm going to be a mechanical engineer for NASA by the age of 38. I'm saying like, just thinking through what are your values? What are you hoping to get out of the organization you work for? And how do those values show up in that search as well? And similar to that, I was talking about your career hopes and dreams. And so trying to find comfort in that conversation or answering those questions and knowing it's perfectly fine if your hopes and dreams change as you get experience and as you go about your career journey. Asking those in your community about their path. Sometimes it's like, I'll be meeting with a student. So some of my work includes one-on-one meetings with students, and I'll be working with a student and they'll say, "Oh, I'm interested in being a physical therapist." And I'm like, "Oh, do you know anyone who's that?" And they're like, well, I actually think my roommate from my first year, their dad was one." And I'm like, "Great. There's a connection right there, right? You already at least know somebody. Worst case, the person doesn't want to meet with you. Best case, they do. And now you have some that you can connect with and get some questions answered, get some industry standard questions answered, and those sorts of things. We'll go more in depth about this next one about messaging CSU alum on LinkedIn. And like I said, prepare to tell your story for when the opportunity arises. And when I'm saying tell your story, it's the parts of your story you want to share, right? No one's entitled to your entire life story. And thinking through what are the things that are important for you, for your next employer to perhaps know about you. Alrighty. So my partner just came home, so my dog is now deciding that she's going to whine. I'm actually gonna not use this slide. Instead, I'm gonna hop onto actual LinkedIn because I want to take you all through it. And so one of the things, let's do the CDOT one. So one of you said you're interested in working for CDOT. So I'm gonna use that one as the example. So let's do this. We are on LinkedIn. You do need to have a profile to do this. It doesn't need to be completely, your profile doesn't need to be completely done to do this. But what we're going to do is we're going to type in Colorado State University to our search bar. And we're going to go to that page. And then we have a tab here that says alumni, and that's what we're going to click on. There's almost 200,000 alumni on here. And there are different ways that we can search through this. So first we'll start with that CDOT example, and then I'll do another example just to give you all an idea. To be honest, I'm not sure. It's possible that some folks are going to have CDOT listed as the acronym and some are not. So let's just see what happens if we type it in with the acronym. Perfect. So I typed that in the search bar. The algorithm on LinkedIn isn't that great. And so now it's just pulling anyone who has CDOT in their profile. So now what we're actually going to do is going to do where they work. So we're looking Colorado Department of Transportation. And if we wanted to, we could actually now get rid of that original CDOT because we got where we wanted. So now we're at 102 alum. It is possible that some of these folks are current students who are currently doing internships or part-time work or full-time work with these folks. And we'll know because of the year that they graduate generally shows up on the bottom of folks' profile. If it says one shared connection, that means you already have someone that you know that knows this person. And so if you want to make a connection, your best bet is actually to reach out to the person whom your connection has already been made and asking them to connect you. So I would ask, I'm not even sure who this is, but I would ask this person, could you, I'm interested in working for CDOT. I see, Lexi, can you connect me with them? And then there's some folks who just have their private stuff and you can't get into that unless you have a premium account, which you can get I think a week free of that if you wanted to. Just make sure you cancel before they charge you. But let's click on this guy, Jared. Department of Transportation, Director of Project Support. So let's say that that's like the area in which CDOT you're interested in working. So this person might be a great connection for you. I always like to scroll down just to get an idea of like a little more about their background. So it looks like they got a BS in engineering. It doesn't say what this degree level is, but I'm assuming since it's 2 years right after the BS, I'm going to assume it's a master's. I can get some ideas of some of the work that they've done previously or where they started with CDOT and where they went. As you can see, this person doesn't have a full profile, right? They graduated in 98 and their stuff on here is not until 2010. So sometimes folks just don't have a lot of additional information. But let's say I wanted to reach out to this person. I'm like, I want to try to connect with Jared. I think they can give me some information and it can be great. So what I actually recommend doing first is clicking this contact info button and seeing if their personal email or their work email shows up. Some people do have that as public, and you're going to get a lot higher response rate from someone's personal email than sending them a message in LinkedIn. So sometimes I would even say, okay, we can't find their email here. Next, what I would actually do is I would actually see if I can find them on the CDOT page. Like, can I find their contact information here? Right. And there's many ways we can scroll through. It looks like this is just a list of names. And there's likely a directory for such a large organization. Anyways, let's say that fails and we can't actually find Jared's contact information. What we can do is we can hit connect and we can add a note. And I have a slide here in a minute about what that note could look like. But reality is, first we want to explain to Jared what we have in common. So I'd be like, hi, Jared, my name is Jenny. I too am a CSU alum. I am interested in learning more about working for CDOT. I would love 10 to 15 minutes of your time if I can. So I'm being honest with them, right? I'm telling them exactly what I'm asking for. Sometimes we're not looking to do an informational interview. So we're not looking to meet with them. We just want a connection so that if things arise or later we want to make connections, we can. So then you could say, hi, Jared, my name is Jenny. I see we're both CSU alum. I'm starting my job search. I'm really excited. CDOT is one of the employers I'm really interested in. I was just hoping we could connect on LinkedIn. When you send a message, the chances of a stranger accepting you are higher than if you don't put anything at all. And I'm going to be honest with you all. The return rate on this, I tell folks, if you send 10 messages and one person gets back to you, then that's a good hit rate. Because the reality is most folks on LinkedIn are either recruiters or people looking for jobs, right? And so as we can see, this hasn't been updated in quite some time. And so the likelihood that Jared's staying up to date on their LinkedIn, or that even their LinkedIn is connected to an email account that they're currently using, may be low. All righty. So, and then another way of doing the search is, oh my gosh, dog. So let's say you're still deciding, you're like, I don't know what I want to do. Let's say you're getting, oh, I didn't mean to hit refresh. Let's say you're getting a degree. We'll use journalism as an example. You're getting a degree in journalism and you're like, I'm not even sure what I want to do with this, or what are the options for me? Hopefully I spelled that right. So in this one, we're going to type in the keyword journalism and we're going to hit this next button and we're going to go what they studied. So now we're going to get down to 4,200 alum who studied journalism. And we get a quick snapshot here where folks ended up, where folks work. As you'll see, some of these places are like on campus. Charles Schwab is not, I would not think, as one of the top employers, right? And so sometimes it just gives you really interesting information back. And then what you could do is you can look through, folks who graduated. This is a good example. This person graduated a few years ago. And so on here, what I can do is I can be like, okay, what did this person do while they were a student? So they were a student from 16 to 18. And so, okay, they worked for Rocky Mount Student Media. Great. And then what did they do? Oh, they were an intern at CSU. They were an intern at Society 19. Oh, that's really interesting. Maybe I'll look into internships through this organization. So it can also help you get ideas of places you could work. Right? A morning news writer, and now they're a content producer. And so this can just help spark some ideas, give you ideas of employers that hire folks with your degree, different types of job titles of folks with your degree, and that sort of thing. Okay, I don't want to belabor the point, so we're going to go back to my slides. Or actually, let me pause. Are there any questions about LinkedIn, about like using LinkedIn for making connections? If you are typing a question in the chat, keep typing it. I'm just going to go back to the slides. I promise I'll come back and answer it. This is the weirdest thing. My mouse disappears. I wasn't even on the slide we were last on. All that was funny. Okay. Wow. Okay, here we go. So this is the slide I was talking about that gives you an idea of, it wasn't showing me the slide. It might have been showing you all the slides, but it wasn't showing me the slide. What is, oh, because now it's showing the slide we were on. Okay, so here's the example of emailing a connection. So the dear, hello, your name, introduce yourself or reintroducing yourself. So let's say you connected with someone at a career fair or at a Connect event, and now you're following up with them on LinkedIn, or maybe you're just following up on an email with them. Definitely follow up so that you don't lose that connection. And so here's how you might go about doing that. So you introduce yourself or reintroduce yourself, make it clear what you're asking for if you're asking for something. Provide contact information, and then wrap up the email. I don't recommend emailing someone your resume unless they've told you that's okay. And definitely, please don't just share your resume from Google Drive with nothing attached to it. I used to run the Tilt tutoring program, and part of the application was a resume. And I can't tell you all how many times I got folks who asked, who just emailed me a Google Drive link. And I'm like, I don't even know who these folks are. Someone has their hand raised. Go ahead.
Yes, I just had a question. So with this slide that you're showing us on how to email, can you share this with us in our emails so that way we can have this to look back on?
Yeah, I will. Deanna, I'll send you the slides, and then can you send it to everyone who's here? Sweet. Yeah. I meant to mention that at the beginning. I'll be sending you all all the slides, all the things.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All righty. Okay. So whether you did it through LinkedIn, whether you emailed someone because you found their contact information, let's say someone has agreed to do an informational interview with you. First, I should explain what an informational interview is. And so informational interviewing is fancy for just like hanging out and getting to know someone. Some folks will call it like grabbing coffee, but I know that not everyone drinks coffee. And so I like the idea of just hanging out and getting to know somebody. Usually when you schedule an informational interview, it's important to have like a timeline, right? Kind of have 10 to 15 minutes of your time. And if you say 10 to 15 minutes of their time, don't take more than 10 to 15 minutes of their time. So if you want more than that, just make sure you're clear because it's possible they've only blocked out a certain portion of their day. But an informational interview is an opportunity for you to learn more about them, about the organization they work for, about the industry that they work in, about their career path. Folks tend to like to talk about themselves. And so just making sure you have questions prepared and questions that you're actually interested in. So don't do informational interviews just for the sake of doing informational interviews. You're doing them because you want to actually gather some information from the person that you're talking to. And so let's say you're doing an informational interview with someone because you're not sure what you want to do after CSU. And you're like, okay, well, I know that graphic designer is an option for me. I know someone who's one. I'm going to do informational interview with them. And so maybe you're asking questions of like, what does a week look like? Or I know graphic designers can be contractors. They can be contract out work. That you could have your own small business, or you could be hired onto an organization and working for them exclusively. And you can ask questions about that. And if that person has experience doing any of those, and what are the pros and cons of both ways. And so what hopefully it turns into is a natural conversation. Yes, you're going to go in with a couple of questions so that the conversation, if it doesn't start taking off naturally, you have a place to fall back on. But ideally, it's going to take off naturally, or it doesn't. And then maybe that's an indication that that's not necessarily a person that you want as a mentor or an advocate. And that's okay as well, right? We have to meet lots of folks to figure out folks that we like. And so that's my best example of an informational interview. Happy to answer questions. We also have resources on our website, and I'll go on to that in a minute to give you some better ideas of questions to ask. But let's say someone has agreed to one, and now what do you do? So be prepared to talk about yourself. So answer the question like, tell me a little bit about yourself, what you're interested in. Once again, it doesn't have to be as specific to knowing exactly what you want to do next. It can just be briefly like why you chose your major, or how you ended up, why you're interested in talking with them, why did graphic design come up. Having specific questions that aren't easily Googleable. And so what I mean by that is not asking questions like, oh, tell me a little bit more about the organization you work for. If it's like a big organization or you're able to find that information online, you could ask questions like, can you tell me a little bit about the work culture? Or what it looks like to, and you can get personal as well, depending on your connection or whatnot, right? And so as a person of color, I might ask, I might notice on the page, well, a lot of the employees here, I'm assuming that they look white, and that there's not a lot of folks of color on this team, or none at all. And so let's say your connection, whether they are or aren't, that could be a conversation, right? Can you tell me a little bit what it's like for someone to be in this office who's a person of color? What does that look like? I've noticed there's not a lot of folks here that would look like me. How would I build community with the folks in this space? Or how have you seen folks build community in this space? It's also a way to try to figure out if an organization might be a safe place for you. And so for some folks, it might be like questions like, or just an idea of, what does the bathroom situation look like? Are they gendered? Is there, are they ungendered? And those sorts of things as well. So you can also use this time to solicit information. Like I said, that's not easily Googleable. Most companies are going to have a non-discrimination policy, but you don't know exactly how that plays out until you've made a connection with someone and find someone who feels comfortable authentically sharing that with you. And that might not be the first person you connect with in the organization. Maybe the first person you connect with, you're like, oh, this is like the recruiter. Their job is to up talk this organization and pretend like it's the best organization in the world, but I want to get like the real answers. That's the skeptical part of me. There are other folks who are the opposite, who are looking for all the positive things about an organization, where I tend to look for all the negative things. So that'll kind of depend on you and what you're looking at, but maybe that recruiter is not the best person to answer those questions for you. And so it's asking that recruiter, like, is there someone on the production team who I can talk to? And that might be a good one for you to talk to. Yeah. And then, at the end, right, you can ask for advice. You can ask for referrals. Asking for referrals is the best way to end an informational interview. So an informational interview purpose is not to get a job. The purpose of an informational interview is to get information and to get a referral. And then that referral might be the thing that leads to the job. But ideally what you're doing is you're connecting with this person. So now their network is opening itself up to you. Okay. So to go a little more depth of like how to answer, tell me about yourself. So this will be another good slide to review once it's sent out and to think through how you might answer the question, tell me about yourself. So how you became interested in the field or industry, what parts of your story are relevant and you want to share, what are you hoping to achieve, what is the goal you have for yourself. You don't have to answer all these questions. These are just some thoughts. And what are some experiences you have in the industry, if you have any? Oh, good question. Let me go back. Okay, question in the chat was, what do I mean about a referral? So this is particularly important if you are meeting like the career fair, for example. Almost everyone who's there employer-wise is a recruiter or a talent acquisition person. And let's say, and this is really important. I think, especially in fields, I've seen this be really important in fields like engineering, or some STEM fields, where the person who's the recruiter may not have a lot of experience in the industry itself. Their experience is in HR, right? And you're like, well, I want to know really what it's like to be a mechanical engineer at those organizations. So it's great that the recruiter can tell you about the internship opportunities and those sorts of things. But you're like, I want to get more into like the nitty gritty of like the mechanical engineering that you all do and what sorts of software and tech that you all use. And so you could ask that recruiter for a referral to someone else in the organization to talk to. How a referral could also look is, let's say you're in a student org. I've actually seen this happen. The student org brings a guest speaker in, and that guest speaker is doing your dream job. And you're like, oh, this is great. So you connect with them, and then you find out though that they are they're doing the work you're interested in, but they're doing it in the East Coast. And you're like, I need to stay in Colorado. Like this is where my family is. I need to stay here. So you might connect with that person and then say, is there anyone that you think I can talk to or that you know in Colorado who I can talk to more about this industry? And so essentially then you're asking a referral there. All righty. I hope that answers your question. If not, put it back in the chat and I'll try better. Okay, so they tell me about yourself. And then, yep, no problem. So I want to talk about online presence. So LinkedIn is one form of online presence, but there are so many ways that we're present online that we may or may not even be aware of. So I'm actually going to have you all do this activity. Just takes a few minutes. So what I'll ask you all to do is use Google or use whichever search engine you use and put in your name and a city you live in, or Colorado State University, or the name of organization you've worked with before. I say this because if you're someone like me who has a name Jenny Kim, you're not going to find me if you just Google that. And so I put in some additional words into the Google so that I actually find myself. But I want you to take a moment, Google yourself, see what comes up, and think about like what assumptions can be made about you, whether they're true or not. What assumptions can be made about you? How does bias and stereotyping potentially show up? What are you okay with employers knowing? Was it currently available that you wish wasn't available? And what is not available that you wish was available? And so I'll give you all a few minutes to Google yourselves. And these are reflection questions, so you do not have to share them in the chat or with other folks. I just want you all to take a moment to take a look. That's perfect. If you typed in, so some of us, I'm not saying that what you're going to find is necessarily going to be bad. And it's great if it's not. And not necessarily is everything bad. Sometimes, so for example, LinkedIn is a good example. If on my resume, I have my LinkedIn profile, someone may read my name on my resume, say, see Jenny Kim. So they might assume I'm a woman. And then if they're familiar with the last name Kim, they might know that it isn't a Korean last name or an Asian last name. So they might be making assumptions about my identity. And then they might click on my LinkedIn profile, and that might give them confirmation of this assumption that they made about my identities based on my name, right? And so I'm at a point where I'm like, well, if you're gonna have a problem with me because I'm half Asian and I'm a woman, I don't want to work for you. For other folks, they're like, I need a job to pay my rent tomorrow. And so I'm not going to put my LinkedIn on there because I don't want them to immediately know and then be biased, be discriminatory and those sorts of things. And so if you're typing it in and the first thing that shows up is your LinkedIn profile, and if that's what you want to show up, great. My question for you is it up to date? Is it is it all the information you want someone to know? And so this activity in general, what I really want you all to focus on is not necessarily the stuff that is on there that you're displeased with, but what is the stuff that's not on there that you would want an employer to know about you? And this is also a good reminder that social media platforms update their privacy settings all the time. And so even when you started your account, everything was private, you might find that some of your posts are now public, or if you commented on a public post, you might be showing up. And so just to give you an idea of your online presence outside of the LinkedIn, but what else might be showing up. To be honest with you all, I don't think there is a lot of employers that are Googling you. I don't think there's a lot of employers who are even clicking on your LinkedIn profile. A lot of companies won't for reasons of discrimination, and it's more of they don't want to be sued for discriminating, so therefore they don't click on the LinkedIn profile page and those sorts of things. And some folks just have policies written in the organization. Some states have policies written, some laws written about using social media and that sort of thing to look at applicants and that sort of thing. And as we all know, even though those laws exist, and even though there are anti-discriminatory acts, folks are still going to be discriminatory. And so it's just important for us to know what is there for us. So hopefully you all enjoyed that. I don't know about you all, I haven't Googled myself in a while. I actually found a mock resume that I don't know how it's on there, but it makes me concerned that some people are going to read it and think it's like my resume. But that's okay, whatevs. I'll think about that next time I look for a job. Okay. Going more into LinkedIn. So 3 things people notice when they're doing a search. So this is just a screenshot of that alumni search that we all did, but also what your profile kind of looks like to people in general while they're just doing a search. So things they're noticing is your photo, your name, and then whatever is written below your name. And then possibly they're noticing if you have connections in common, but mostly the top stuff is what they're looking at. most important thing to note here is you can change this little header. So it's going to automatically put your header as what you currently are doing. And so let's say your profile says you're a current student. It will have like current student CSU. Or let's say that you're currently doing, you're working as a barista. That will be the first thing that shows up. Another thing to note is this though. Let's say you were working on campus in the Slice office. Now you've graduated, you updated your LinkedIn profile to say, that you don't work there anymore because you graduated. It will say unemployed if you currently don't have work. And not to say there's anything wrong with that. I mean, you just graduated, and we can tweak this and edit it to look like what we want it to. And so this is a good example that Larry has here of an edited version of a header. So what they're doing is they're choosing words they want to be associated with. So they want to be associated as a student. Maybe they're looking for an internship. They want to be associated with the program that they're in, and then leadership. And we don't know what the rest of it says because it only shows so much. And so I recommend editing this to be what you want it to say about you. Specifically because it's easier for a recruiter to find you in this manner than necessarily if it's your current job title. There's a lot of transferable skills you can get from student employment or from part-time work that may not feel like it's completely relevant to the industry you're going into. So for example, let's say you're a server right now, and then you're looking at getting into biology research. There are still a lot of great skills in that. So that's what we want to focus the profile on. We might talk about like managing multiple priorities or problem solving and those sorts of skills. Once again, another thing that's up to you. What I try to do in these presentations and in general is I try to give you all like the why behind why I have suggestions, so that then you all can go and make informed decisions. So don't take my word as like the end all be all, just take the learning from what I'm saying and then make these decisions as they feel right for you. Or at least is my hope is what you do. Okay. Oh, I go more into depth about the headline. I'm not going to actually belabor this point. I'm actually going to move on because I want to stick with time. And we still need, again, resumes and cover letters. This is another one I recommend you all just check out after this presentation. There's a summary section on LinkedIn profiles. And it's just like where you can talk a little bit more about yourself. And these are some questions to consider answering in that section. Once again, you don't have to have answers to all these questions. They're going to be very similar to the tell me about yourself sort of questions. Okay, let's jump into resume now. Is this the updated one? Interesting. Okay, well, I have two resumes here. We're going to call the one on the left number 1, or you can call it left. And then one on the right, we're going to call number 2, or the one on the right. In the chat, if folks just tell me like what's standing out to you, what do you like, what do you not like? I'll also mention I made both of these up, so we're not like criticizing any like a person. I made both of these up. So just your initial thoughts on these resumes in the chat, please. And then just make sure you're clear of which one you're talking about. Number 1 has a lot of white space. It's vague. I know that they're a little blurry. Sorry about that. I also want to acknowledge if you're on a cell phone, it's going to be really hard for you all to see that. So I apologize. Anything else folks are seeing? Okay, even ask the question, which of these folks are you more likely to interview? One has spelling mistakes. the difference in qualifications. Yeah. The difference of them being at the top and the bottom. Number 2 is more detailed, so I'd have to interview that one. Sweet. I like to start this activity when we go into resume writing because I like to point out that you all already know a lot about resume writing. Even if you've never written one before, just your ability to look at these two and distinguish the difference in what you like and don't like as an indication of your knowledge that's already present. So let's get real in depth about these resumes. I'm going to be using the one on the right as the example. So first thing is, what experience counts? I see a lot of resumes that only have paid work experience, but there are so many other great things that you may have done that weren't paid or that happened in the classroom that you want to write about on your resume, and you can. All that really matters is you're writing about stuff that is relevant or that is transferable. And I'll get more into that transferability in a minute here. So I'm going to go back to the slide for a second here because the one on the right has some more in-depth bullet points. So someone mentioned it was more detailed than the one on the left. So the one on the left is talking about being a staff member in the bookstore, and the bullet points are essentially what I would say is like the job description, right? Ringing customers up, stocking shelves, doing what my supervisor asks me to do. Whereas the one on the right is focused more on the skills and what was accomplished with those skills. So assisted all students who come into the dining hall by checking in over 100 students every hour, developing skills to succeed in a fast-paced environment. So now what we're doing with that one is, maybe I'm applying for a job that is also a fast-paced environment. So the hiring manager is looking at this going, oh, great, they have that skill, they'll apply it to the new job. Whereas the one on the left, it's not saying that. And so maybe the job you're applying for on the left is a lab position, and they're not seeing how that's relevant to this job. And it is, we just have to help them understand those transferable skills and the skills that you will bring to that work. So with all that said, bullet points have a formula. This is a said formula. So action plus skill set plus result, purpose or accomplishment. And so I added purpose and accomplishment because not everything that we do has like a measurable result, and that is okay. So results could also be that you've developed or you've strengthened a skill. Accomplishments can be a promotion. It could be you earn certification. It could even be something like you essentially did such a great job that your supervisor asked you to train the new employees, right? That's an accomplishment that demonstrates there's a reason they asked you to train the new employees. So now we just start the bullet point with what is it that you did that built that trust that led to that. And then the last one, purpose. My example here is provided excellent customer service skills to ensure customers return. It's not the best bullet point, but you might be thinking, well, duh, Jenny, the purpose of customer service is so customers return. But by giving that purpose, we're demonstrating to the employer we understand why we do the work that we do, which may indicate to them that we'll be motivated, that we will take initiative, right? Some of the things that go along with someone who's able to reflect on their experiences. We might be more open to feedback because we're already reflecting on our work and that sort of thing. So some examples of action verbs: created, facilitated, managed, led. These are all past tense. So if the experience is over, that's when you would use them. If you're currently in the experience, it would be facilitate, create, organize, maintain, so on and so forth. So the present tense. So on the right here is some data. It's a few years old now. It gets updated every year, but I'll tell you this, even though this is not the most updated one, these skills are almost always, maybe they switch where they're at, but the top are always in the top. And so these are top skills employers are looking for. And so when I said transferable skills earlier, right, working at the bookstore, ability to work in a team, right? Bookstore, there's a team environment there. and so on and so forth. And so thinking through your skills from that lens, not necessarily I know how to operate a cash register, which is important if you're applying for another job where that is part of the work, but more of like, what does that mean? Like, what are the skills that are used in that? Right, if I imagine cash register, I'm being trusted with money. And so maybe I can say something along those lines, or that I'm detailed oriented because I have to count the register. I also give this list because some job postings are very vague. So they're not very clear what skills that they're looking for. And so if you can't find skills and what they want you to have, you can rely on some of these attributes. All righty. I'm going to have you all write a bullet point now. So this job description on the left is very vague intentionally, but what I would like you to do is take a look at that job description, and I'll read it aloud because I know some of you might not be able to see the screen. Identify a skill in it that you want to write a bullet point about, right? So we're tailoring this bullet point to this job. Choose an experience you've had past 5-ish years. It could be further out, it's fine. And you're going to write a bullet point statement. And so in the bottom of the screen is that formula. I'm also going to send you all in the chat a PDF that has a bunch of good action verbs to consider. They're not all the action verbs, but I can't send it in the chat. Darn. Okay, what I'll do is I'm going to copy and paste the action verbs from the previous slide so you all have them. But yeah, take a few minutes, write a bullet point, try it out. Let me know what questions you have. It can be easier not to start with the action verb. Sometimes it's easiest to just think through, okay, what did I do in this as a volunteer? Or it could even be like lab work. So a lot of folks who are looking to go into research and most of their lab experience has been in the classroom. It can even be that. But thinking through, what is it I did? What is the skill I want to focus on? And then putting it into the formula tends to be a more natural way of thinking about it. Feel free to share with me the bullet points in the chat privately or publicly. If you want feedback on them, let me know. Otherwise, I won't give unsolicited feedback. Go ahead and take like 30 more seconds. All righty. So you all will have had different experiences trying to write that. Some of you took just a break from the computer and went to the bathroom. That's fine. Some of you, you're like, I've written resume. I just tweaked one that I already have. For some of you, it might have been like, oh, that was a really difficult task for me to do, or I've never done it like this before. And so what I want to remind you all is the Career Center, we have multiple ways that you can engage with us. One of them being a drop-in appointment. And so I'll show you all in a bit, like at the end, how to get access to all these things. But they're about 15, 20 minutes connecting with somebody. Could be a quick resume review, can even be you haven't started the resume yet. You just want to sit down with someone and start brainstorming. You can cover topics beyond the resume as well. Or you can do a 45-minute appointment with a career educator or a career manager as well. So if that was a real struggle, I recommend connecting with us just so that you have the support. If you're like, that felt great, I edited some I still recommend connecting with us. I'm not saying that you necessarily need feedback, criticism on your resume, but for what's next, what comes after the resume and those sorts of things. So the message there was, regardless of what that was like, you should connect with us. Okay, moving on. Okay, so what else can go on a resume? Accomplishments, certifications. That's funny. There's supposed to be a line on this, and I'll explain that in a second. So a lot of folks may have seen a list of skills. That first resume actually had it, where it had a list of skills and qualifications that just listed words. I recommend not doing that unless they are technical skills that you need for a technical career. And so, for example, if like computer science is what you're going into and the job postings are all asking for Python and C++, then yes, it's easy just to put that in a skills list. That's perfectly fine. But for those other skills, for those transferable skills, we want them to show up in your resume bullet points. Because if I started this presentation, I said, hi, everybody, my name is Jenny, and I have great leadership skills. You might be like, okay, that was really random. But the other thing is, how much would you believe me? You might believe me a little bit because I have a title. But reality is you wouldn't have any context to go off of to decide if that was believable or not. Whereas if in a bullet point statement, I talked about being the president of a student organization and leading my team to accomplish X goal, now I'm giving you more context, and now it's a little more believable, and you can understand how I have leadership skills and what it looks like. And so that's why I advocate for not having a list of skills. Some folks have heard about the computer algorithms that are, some call it AI, but I argue it's not actually intelligence. It's just algorithms that pull from your resume if you meet all the skills that the employer is looking for. But if you think about it, if your bullet points are talking about those same skills anyways, it's going to still pull the same number of times you said the word teamwork. But also, after your resume goes through that computer system, it's going to go to a human person. And we don't want we want the human person who now is going to attach, thoughts and feelings to it to actually see and be able to comprehend those skills a little bit more than what a computer can. Other things you could have on there, affiliation groups, so student clubs, Greek life, etc. This is another place where bias could show up in a resume. So let's say you're part of a student organization. So OSTEM, for example. OSTEM is a student organization for those who identify as LGBTQ+ and who are in STEM. It stands for Out in STEM. There might be some assumptions about your identity if you have OSTEM on there. For some folks, they're perfectly fine with that. They're like, nope, I want to be at an organization that'll appreciate me for who I am. And so I have no time in my life for their bias and whatnot. And so and then once again, for other folks, they're like, as a part of my identity that I don't think I necessarily want the employer to know right off the bat, or that they're worried about the bias and the discrimination. So they might opt to leave it off. I would argue, don't leave it off. What you could do is you can just say, treasurer of a student organization. You don't have to say what it is. Now, granted, you can get yourself into some like not where you want to be, because in an interview, an employer could ask you more about that experience and you might feel like then you have to name the organization. So I will acknowledge that if you decide to choose more vague language, that employer might ask you questions about that. And so just thinking through how you might answer those questions. Greek life is another one that has some stereotypes associated with it. And so I tell folks, if you're going to talk about it, make sure you have bullet points. Just like in the work experience, have bullet points about what is it that you accomplished there. Is it the philanthropy? Is it the volunteer work? And talking through that experience and the skills that you utilized and gained. Some resumes start with their, you might have heard of a summary or a profile. I argue for the qualification section. Summary and profile to me will show up in a cover letter anyways, and the qualifications we can tailor towards that specific job. And so if a job is asking for 2 years of work experience and you've had 2 years of part-time work experience, and you want them to count that as 2 years of work experience, then you can put in your qualifications, 2 years of experience in program design, or it can be specific to skill. If they're really looking for someone who has excellent written and verbal communication skill, you can say excellent written and verbal communication skills as exemplified through, and then you write out a couple of the experiences on your resume that will go more into depth on it. No photos on a resume. We talked a little bit about LinkedIn, so your decision if you want to put that there or not, and portfolio websites. So some of you who might be like engineering might have a GitHub, in a design type major, you might have photography. So you might have a website that has your work on it, or graphic design, and you have examples of that. You can put that on the resume. I get a lot of questions about GPA. Reality being, there are some industries where it is important, but for most, the employer cares mostly that you got the degree, especially if you're not looking for an internship. So some internship programs do have GPA requirements. And so I say, if you meet the GPA requirement, just put it on the resume. So it's a quick, easy check mark, yes. But if you don't meet the GPA requirement, don't necessarily put it on your resume, and then maybe use your cover letter as an opportunity to talk about it, to what you're most comfortable with, and really getting the employer to appreciate you for who you are versus not having met their GPA qualification, especially if it's by like 0.1 or 2 points. A lot of them are willing to waive that just so long as they have context about why it is. We all have stuff that happens. I know personally, I had a semester in college where I had mono and failed a bunch of finals. Great time. Obviously my GPA took a dip, right? And so if I'm able to talk about that to an employer, they're going to be understanding of that and that sort of thing. And sometimes it's just, you had a bad semester and you learned from it, and just talking about what you learned from it, that's fine as well. Really what it comes down to is, what are you okay with an employer knowing about you? There's some data there on the right. To be quite honest with you all, I don't have the references for that data. It's on our resume guide, so I'm sure it came from somewhere, and I want to say it came from a reliable source. And because I don't personally know where it came from, I have it on there so you can take a look. And as always, we should question things that we can't find the reference source for. Okay. Questions about resumes? Feel free to type them in the chat as we continue along here. We're going to go into cover letter. But I already showed them everything in my resume. So I like to reframe that to, now I get to let myself shine, give more context, and tell them why we're a good match. So how I think about it is, the resume is the quick overview. It's like the table of context to the textbook. It gives you an idea of what the book is going to be about. And then the cover letter is more like the back of the book that has that quick summary, but gives you a little more context about what it's going to cover, or gives you an idea of the writing style and those sorts of things. So really we get to go more in depth on the cover letter. I also like to think of the cover letter as storytelling. And so I know it says letter, and we can tell stories in a letter. That's perfectly fine. So before we even get into though, what goes on the cover letter, it's really important your cover letter is specific to that job and that company. Sometimes you can get away with submitting a very similar cover letter, especially if you're applying to 5 jobs that are the exact same title, they're asking for the exact same things. or even if they're not the exact same title, but they're all kind of looking for the same thing, you can kind of get away with only making a few tweaks here and there and not having to rewrite the whole document. But if you're unsure of what's next and you're like, I'm going to apply to like 3 different types of jobs, then you're definitely going to want cover letters that are more specific to those types of jobs. I'll get into more into detail in a second here. But in order to tailor your resume, you need to do some research. So you need to get some information about the company or the organization. And so what are the company's or institution's values? So even if you're thinking of grad school, like a personal statement is very similar to a cover letter. You're doing similar research. How can you contribute to that mission? If you did an informational interview, there's some stuff in there that you might decide to add. What is the job posting asking for? How can you contribute to that? Okay, give me 1 second. That was actually not my partner coming home before. That was someone else coming home. Now this is actually him coming home. So, okay. So you're doing research on this organization. And next, we're going to actually start writing it. So I like to think, I don't know what her problem is. So in this part of the presentation, this part of the document is going to be the intro. So I like to think about the cover letter in 3 parts. So the first part is just getting their attention. And so on the right here, some stuff that might show up at the beginning of a cover letter. You're stating the title of the position you're applying for. You're opening with why you're interested or connection you have to the organization based on your research, or what are your qualifications. And so let's say that this is what we're applying for. Once again, very vague. I did that intentionally. And let's say you're looking for a job on doing economics. So this is an underground society. They're trying to put together an underwater society, and they need someone to help with establishing what will currency look like. And so you're applying for this job. And so in this cover letter, you're going to write about, you're going to make it clear what the job is you're applying for. And then you might talk about how like you believe in this mission, or how this mission is important to you as well, or maybe some of the values that you have in common with them. Now, do not say, oh, you all have the same values as me, and name all 5 values, right? That doesn't feel authentic. Only name the values if they truly are values of yours. It's okay if it's only a 2 values match. But also you want to be able to speak to that. So if in the interview they say, oh yeah, we really appreciated how you have some of the same values as us. Tell us how that plays out for you in your work. Like you want to be able to answer that question, talk about, well, here's why service is important to me, and so on and so forth. Okay. Thank you all for your patience with that. Okay. The next part of the cover letter, and I'm not saying that the cover letter has to be 3 paragraphs. It could be 4, it can be whatever, but I just like to talk about it in these chunks. So the middle part and the meat of it is marketing your skills. So you're aligning your skills to the job. You're writing about how you have demonstrated your qualifications, include specific results or outcomes. And the way you do that is through storytelling. And so I tell folks, write down the skills you want to talk about. Then try to think about a time or a situation in which you use those skills. And that's what you're going to write about. The last paragraph is the easiest part. You're just wrapping up. Thank you for your time. I'm still interested. So on and so forth. I'm actually going to drop for you all in the chat here an example of, I can't do it in the chat. I forgot this. I'm going to send that to you, Deanna, to send out to everyone. I'm going to send you all a mock resume and a mock cover letter that shows you this explicitly. But I'm also going to show you all real quick a little bit about our online resources. So I know we're covering a lot. The idea here is just to give you all kind of a sense of the different things that we could talk about in like an appointment, those sorts of things. So if you still have questions, or you're still like, I have no idea what Jenny was just on about, definitely connect with us. So this is our homepage, career.collegestate.edu. Banners move and tend to have upcoming events or important information. help. So for example, a lot of folks are getting job scams right now. So these banners are all clickable. So if you click on them, you actually get additional information. Other things to show you on our website is top right here is how you get connected with us. So Connect 101 is going to give you our drop-in times. To do drop-ins during these times, this button you can click. You'll put in the bubble drop-in, name, email, start chat. There's a real human behind here. I promise you all. There's a real human who will respond to you. If it's during these times, they'll be like, well, we'll send you a Zoom link in a minute here. So just, hang with us and they'll do that sort of thing.
Hey, Jenny.
Yes.
Are other folks seeing the page that Jenny's showing, or is it just the resource page?
Oh, good call. Good call.
Okay, there it is.
Are you seeing it now? Okay, my bad. Sorry, I'm gonna show you all. So Connect 101, drop-in hours are all here. I don't say them because they differ. So Mondays and Fridays, there's a little fewer hours than Tuesday through Thursday. So I just show you all where to find them. This is the chat with us button I was talking about. Sometimes on a phone, it looks a little bit different. Or if you're looking at it on a vertical screen, but know that this button should still be there. And then if you wanted to do a 45-minute appointment, you can click on this button. It'll have you log in with your e-name and password. And then it'll take you straight into Handshake, which is the software that we use for job postings, for our appointment scheduling, and all the things that have to do with actually getting connected, registering for events and those sorts of things. You can also call if you're not finding what you're looking for. Okay, resources, Resource Center. So let's say you get that mock cover letter of mine, you're like, that's cool, but like that doesn't really explain to me how to write this cover letter any better than the presentation did. So you might click on topics and you might go to, and then you click on cover letter. And then we have resources on how to write a cover letter. This one right here is our cover letter guide, and it goes more in depth. Same thing. So you can, same thing with all the different topics. Right? So you would click on this, look at different topics. We also have by career interests, so different industries. We also have it by, we have some resources that are specific to different identities and populations. You can also mix and match these sorts of things. So let's say you're like, ooh, I'm a student of color, I'm looking for networking. So you can click that one, you click networking. Okay, that's broken because we definitely have resources for that. So I don't know what's going on here. That's an error on our side because I know for sure that we have like a list of all professional associations. Maybe that's why it didn't show up. Maybe it's under professional associations, which are another form of a way of networking. Here we go. And so different things will pop up. Our filtering is not the end all be all or necessarily always the best. So I tell folks, if you're really looking for something specific, type in a keyword here. And that way it searches all the resources. There's over 800 on here. So they become intimidating very fast. Or if you're just like, I don't know, I'm looking for something, but it's not showing up, just let us know. Chances are it's coded poorly, but I promise you it's probably in there. Were we slated to 4:45 or 5? We're at 4:45.
4:45, yeah.
Okay, sorry. It's okay. That was actually, we're good. That's the end of the presentation. I'm going to give you all my contact information, but let me tell you all the truth about me. I will be starting a new position in the Career Center on Monday, this Monday, March 1st. So I won't be doing student appointments anymore at that time, but feel free to still email, connect with me, ask questions. I can get you connected with other folks in our office as well. And so know that just because I'm not doing student appointments anymore doesn't mean I can't still be here for you all and help out if there's questions and comments and those sorts of things that are showing up. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Everyone, please join me in thanking Jenny today for taking time to this presentation, and thank you all for being here and engaging. If you all have any questions, please email myself or Jenny, and then I will follow up with some of the information that Jenny was sharing that would be sent to you all. So we'll try to incorporate the links and resources with the website recording. That's usually going to be like the best option for us. And don't forget to do that post evaluation for both, well, for either program, our STEM area or our classic area, for folks to get credit for one of their 2 senior seminars.
Wait, what's the evaluation?
Yeah, so we have it. I'll go ahead and just send it here in the chat here. But do folks have any like last questions for Jenny? And if folks need to head out, that's totally fine.
Will you also send out the presentation to us? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny.
I'm literally doing my exam right now.
I'm gonna be posting the link here for the evaluations. If you have them already and you need to head out, feel free to leave the Zoom. I'm gonna stop recording here.